How's it going, guys? It's been a bit. It's your buddy Churrasco Voltor with another game review. This time bringing you Gremlins 2, the new batch, released in 1990 for the NES. Don't be confused. This is not based. There is no Gremlins 1 to my knowledge. Gremlins 2 is just based on the film that came out about the same time. So let's check this out. As you know, the Gremlins franchise is about a tiny foreign man that's covered in fur. He's disabled and he's abused by Americans. He's kidnapped by this guy and forced to do manual labor for him. Or something like that. So let's check this out. So, immediately, right off the rip, presentation and graphics, guys. This is a looker, if I do say so myself. Really nicely detailed sprite for Gizmo. That's the name of the little foreign man that you control. And nice sprite animations on top of that. Nice color palette, if I do say so myself. I know it's a little drab right now, but this is an office building setting. You know, that office building that people work in that has missing floor chunks and giant tomatoes bounding about. But whatever. Now, pretty standard fare as far as what the game looks like and what it sounds like. Let's move on to the sound. The music, if you guys can hear it, is quite phenomenal, I would say. It's really nice stuff. It's nicely done, and it really is a nice tie-in to the movie. I can't remember if this particular track is in the movie or anything, or a rendition of a song from the movie, but I think it fits the game quite nicely and the subject matter of Gremlins really well. Now, for some of you movie buffs out there, I don't know if these tomatoes are supposed to be a throwback to another 80s kind of horror comedy, like maybe Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, but it all works out. The sound is great, and here's the old man that you're kidnapped from in the beginning in the first movie. I'm just buy this. Yeah, sure, yeah, why not? But yeah, presentation and graphics leave really nothing to be desired. This is quite nice for a NES game, if I do say so myself. I'm very impressed. I remember playing this at a buddy's house back in the mid-90s, maybe? Or maybe early 90s? This came out in 1990. So I remember playing it at a buddy's house, and I was really amazed by how cool it looked. You would have thought it was playing on an early SNES game, the way it looks so nice and sounds so nice. And sprite flicker is really not that bad either. Which, well, okay, bad time for me to say that, right? When these tomatoes and these bats are coming out. But anyways, yeah, presentation and graphics gets an A+ for me. As far as gameplay goes, I really dig this like viewpoint overhead type of deal that we have going on with Gizmo. It look at that, first level complete. It's really, really nicely done. It's extremely fluid and responsive for a gremlin. Gizmo is really, really intuitive to control. Right now, as you can see, my weapon consists of a tomato to just throw. It's the most standard weapon that there is in the game. Later on, you do upgrade to like a matchstick that shoots out fire. There are other upgrades later on. I forget what they are exactly. I haven't played this in a bit. But yeah, the tomato's a little cumbersome to control, but don't let that dissuade you guys. The game actually is buttery smooth. Later on, the better weapons just make a huge difference. You would think the jumping is tricky, and it can be. The jumping only gets really tricky whenever there's moving platforms, which do sometimes rear their heads up at the worst moments. But honestly, overall, jumping over like holes and pitfalls is really not that difficult. As you go along in the gameplay, as you kill enemies, you notice they drop these like silver orbs. They're your main source of currency, if I'm not mistaken. With that, you can buy extra life. You can buy power-ups for your weapon. Later on, your matchstick, you get a power-up that actually lets you shoot it 3 ways, as opposed to just the standard one. And it's really helpful for taking out some enemies later on, especially these annoying, fast, small enemies, which you'll see that it's kind of an abundance of, especially early on. Bats, spiders, rats, things like that are kind of a pain for Gizmo to deal with, especially consider he's a larger sprite. Even though he's super fast, you see, he outruns bats. And he always, and you know what I really like also? I noticed this earlier while playing. He walks around like he's hungry. He's like, yum, 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 yum. You can't find the fridge. So I really like that. But that's just the quirkiness and the charm there is to this. You can see in the gameplay, there's these little scattered shops. that Gizmo can walk into and talk to his master. So he's got 610 CB. CB for, I don't know, coriander buns? I don't know. So this, I think, is an extra life. This fills up your heart meter. We'll buy that right now because we need that. There you go, 4 hearts. As you can see also, I don't know if you guys noticed, this is kind of a nice little game to play for younger players, at least in the beginning, because it is very friendly. You have an abundant life bar, really. Those hearts, I think, take at least 2 hits to fully disappear. You can see right now it's pounding because that means that I got hit a couple times, but it won't fully go away until you get hit again. This is really where the game becomes the trickiest, when these moving platforms come into play, because then it's kind of, you kind of have to gauge where you're going to land and really carefully plan your jumps, because once Gizmo jumps, the good thing is he doesn't fully commit to the jump. You can change midair, but he's kind of a chunky little guy, and his jumps are not really the best. But overall, I'd say gameplay, there you go, Matchstick. Gameplay gets a solid, B-, I'd say. In presentation, also going back to this, that's the little cutscenes that harken back to the movie itself. Gizmo is not being pegged by a ghost here. He is actually having water administered to him, which, according to the Gremlins lore, spawns evil gremlins from him. Like these guys. Unfortunately, the notorious Sprite from Part 1 is not here because it's based on Part 2, which is not as iconic, but it's still a fun time. This is nicely done. It captures the mean spirit of those evil gremlins that treated Gizmo so poorly. This is really, really nicely done. Look at that. That looks really good. So, now we find ourselves in the vents as we move along. I know that later on in the game, as we haven't seen the Matchstick, a much better weapon. Still a short range, but it still does better damage. And later you can upgrade it, like I said, to have a 3-way shot, which is really nice. But anyways, I remember playing this, and shortly you will run into a gremlin boss monster, which is a lot tougher. One of the mutated gremlins. It's a lot tougher than any of the standard enemies to take care of. There are bigger sprites though, so there's a bigger hit boss correspondingly. Now, the only downer I can say that I kind of give this a negative to, while the levels are small, which is good actually, they are rather maze-like sometimes in the way they're set up. And sometimes it's just cheap. Like the hits are kind of cheap the way they're set up. Like some of the enemies are just dart out of nowhere, and you have nowhere to go but falling into a pit or into a trap. Like that guy, that guy's a pain. Now, another cool little thing to make the game kind of friendly is if you initially fall into a pit, you will actually do a little cute animation for Gizmo where he grabs a little balloon and he floats up. With that little balloon, alright, here we're going to power up our weapon here real quick. With that balloon, it saves you from one pitfall, and you have a short amount of invulnerability time to float wherever you need to get to. So if you have that balloon power up, because it wastes after one use, you can actually choose to kind of, if you see a platforming area is going to become too difficult, might as well just take the hit on the heart meter, because it won't immediately waste a life with the balloon really, and just kind of float somewhere to a safe area. So anyways guys, concluding that in gameplay and the ease and the accessibility of this game, I'd say this is quite the gem in my opinion. Not necessarily a hidden gem. I think this game is not that obscure, but it's definitely getting a little bit harder to find, as all old games are, year by the year. And I highly recommend picking this one up. This is a fun time, and I think it's actually one of the rare NES games that you could probably sit down and beat. Because I don't know about you guys, but for me, beating NES games can be pretty darn difficult. But this one's not that bad, and it's a fun time. If you're a fan of Gremlins especially, and you have fond memories of Gizmo, and the evil gremlins and yum yum and all that cool stuff, then definitely pick this up, give it a shot, and see what you think. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this little review of Gremlins 2 for the NES, and I will catch you next time on the Churrasco Voltorb review show. Later.